Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the belated Late Mail Crew's Thursday night questions podcast. We had a bit of an issue last night with trying to record the files, and so we're doing a bit of something different this week. Cookie's gone down below and answered all the questions. I'm going to go through and give my take on them and wrap it up in a bit of a video format and discuss what I reckon Cookie's opinions are like versus mine opinions. All right, so this week, first up, we've got Storms with his team. He's got a bit of a tricky week deciding whether to run 11 or 12. He needs a mid or a wing fullback. On his bench there, you can see Hynes and Tanner Boyd being looped. Probably also to help with Sean Johnson if he's potentially out. I think Johnson is now supposed to be in from an Instagram post from his wife saying, I hope that you don't come while daddy's away or something like that. So Sean Johnson does look like he's going to get on the plane and play this week. So it looks like just a hooker loop. Okay, so having a look, he's thinking of getting someone like AFB or Tohu. Only thing is that may sacrifice chances to get someone like a Haas or Yo later down the track. Getting a mid this week means I don't grab one next week as I'd be one short otherwise. Any input would be appreciated. Got 3 trades and 688k in the bank. That's a lot of coin Storms. You can do anything with that pretty much. Okay, so he's thinking about the Warriors guys, AFB and Tohu. I would probably lean Tohu. AFB's probably going to score a little bit more, and he's been absolutely gunned this year. His form in the NRL, I would put him up in the top 2 along with Payne Haas. But is that going to be quite the level of like an Isaiah Yo or a Payne Haas? I don't think so. I probably would take the cash, the slightly little bit cheaper option with Tohu, and then probably put him on the bench long term, and then have 3 like 60 to 65 plus guns like DeBellin, potentially Horsburgh, Haas, and Yo, with Tohu being more that bench keeper, but not like somebody you want to play in your starting team each week because you might lose 5 points a week in some head-to-heads, things like that. It's what got to come into consideration. Look, both pretty good options. Personally, I'd look to go Tohu, but his problem is it would sacrifice his chance to get somebody like that. A big thing that we've got going on is there's a few players that we want to pick up in the run home. Guys like Latrell, guys like Cleary, all expensive but not available at the moment. They're probably going to be back around 2021, something like that, and we'll want them in the run home. So if you're getting a Tohu Harris, that means you probably sacrifice all chance of getting at least one of those 3 guys. That's a really tough one to swallow. So I would it's so much money though. I'd potentially look like trading out somebody like a Turpin this week to potentially a wing fullback gun to get 12 this week and then get a gun mid next week, whether that's Isaiah Yo. I quite like him versus Payne Haas. Now that Haas is probably back in round 21 instead of 20s, particularly since Horsburgh is also not going to be playing round 20. But he has 688k in the bank. How much is he just leaving points there versus actual value? So it's a bit of a tricky one. Piakura is a cash down you've got already there. Look, you could pot it up with AFB or Tohu. I reckon you've got enough money in the bank, you'll be probably able to get at least a couple of those guys. Like Nelson, when Eliesa Katoa potentially comes back in a few weeks, he might be somebody that reaches 650, 700k with his really good scores at the edge recently, and you're able to move on to one of those guys when you weren't expecting to. So he's got 3 trades. He's probably got enough to be able to do a luxury trade like that later on. Anyway, that's probably where I'd be heading with that. So I would look to get a mid and either cash out somebody so you can pick up a wing fullback so you can play 13, but 12 is probably enough this week to hold rank or maybe push ranks if you've got a strong 12. Anyway, that was a very long answer. Let's see what else we've got this week. We've got my question. For some reason, it's changed my name with streamer mode for this video. But anyway, proper wing fullback cash down, basement price like Munro, Wilson, Lumi, that'll most likely only be around for this week, or maybe if you're really lucky stay in the team but not really score that well, or somebody who's cash down but not like a proper cash down, sort of more a semi cash down that either has good job security or good scoring compared to the cheaper guys. So I've listed Chris and Tavare. I know a few people are interested in Avarillo as well, but I really wouldn't put him in that bracket. I wouldn't touch him in that Dogs team at the moment. And Chris is a lot cheaper. I would prefer someone like Chris if you're going to do that. He's got dual. He's probably bottomed out, and you might want him in, say, round 21 when Lemuelu is on bye, if you're not selling Lemuelu by then. So you'll probably need him for those 2 weeks, and then he'll sit as your absolute emergency cover for the rest of the year. So Chris, all right. I don't love him. I don't hate him. He's there. I know some people are really keen. I think the amateurs boys like him, but TK doesn't, and I'm ambivalent. Tavare, look, he seems to have shored up that spot with Brenko playing in the reserves, but Wayne Bennett loves to change things up and hates fantasy managers. We've seen that twice with, I think it was Bostock early in the year on the wing for 1 week, and then it came back. And we just seen that with a new winger. I can't even remember his name at the moment. But yeah, so not a guarantee that Tavare is going to stay there all year, but he's definitely the one that will score a bit better. He's more expensive than Chris, about 370, I think. Good option. I think he's the most popular guy being traded in this week. I'm not against it. Just be sure you know that's not a sure thing. Like, it could be. That'd be great. He might get up to 500k sort of a thing, 550k, and be a really good backup centre. But anyway, those are my thoughts regarding those. I think I'm going to go along the lines of a proper cash down like Munro. I think he's the only one with even a slight chance of holding that spot on the Bunny side. That right wing side has been just a rotation, a revolving door for the Bunnies this year. If they can score a few tries this week against the Bulldogs and he can at least have a shot at holding spot, I'm going to go that, because that's going to give me probably 100 more K to do some really awesome upgrades next week, like Bullock to Fafita and things like that. Anyway, I'll be interested to see what Cookie says in a minute, but we'll see how we go. Okay, Dulux. Thoughts on downgrading Robson to Hands this week, bringing Grant for Buller next week? And if I do bring in Hands, who to play out of him and Simpkin unable to loop? Okay, that's an interesting question, because I would have said 100% pull the trigger if you're able to loop. If you're not, he feels like a better buy if Sean Johnson was still really uncertain, because you could sit him on the bench, you could put Simpkin on the bench, and then if Sean Johnson went wrong, you just plug him into half and you'll be fine. So I think value for money and job security and cover, Hands is hands down the best cash out this week. But do you need him? And how many Eels do you have? You're going to miss all the Eels in round 27. And if you don't have a couple of trades left when you've got guys, especially guys like maybe the Penrith boys being rested, if their position is secure, you might be playing with like 14 that week and really, really be hurting because you've got so many Eels. I personally have Madison, Hopgood, and Penasini, but my plan is probably to trade Hopgood out in about round 21, 22 to go towards someone like a Cleary, because the whole Eels pack's going to be back at that stage, and I really can't see him getting out those really, really big minutes consistently, and so I'd probably look to move him on then, but I have 4 trades before this week, so it's a little bit of a luxury. And for this, I think that's probably a good plan. I would probably play... I'm tempted to say Simpkin, because Simpkin still scored 38 in like about 45 minutes in an absolute thrashing. That's a real good effort. If the Tigers can have a little bit of a bounce back game, and the Sharks aren't defensive powerhouses. They are near the top for points scored, but they're also not great for points conceded. They put 50 on the Dragons, and the Dragons still scored 18 against them. So, in all honesty, I'd probably go Simpkin. But, I mean, it's really hard to tell this week. Orozco's given a bit of a dig at Cookie this week. He's got to try and catch up a little bit this week because he's held trades for a bit and slipped. But he's got 5 trades that he's going to come home really strong, I think. So we'll see how we go. Roscoe again, the proper question. Is Payne Haas a sell now? Back around 21 with a couple of bye weeks. Huge worry. I think he's best to bin now and chase points. You know what? I actually kind of agree with this. So what have we got? We're about to hit round 19. So we've got 19, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're missing like a third of the games that are left. And that's really not somebody you want in your team. Look, Roscoe, I have Haas. I bought him last week over Yo when I needed a mid. I'm glad I did, but now I'm in this sticky situation as well. So I'm personally going to hold because I don't have Horsburgh. That's hurt me a bit. But when Horsburgh's going to miss 19 and 20 like Haas, I'm not going to be in as bad a boat as a few who have Horse and Haas. And those that do have Horse, I sort of am in a similar situation. So I'm personally holding for anyone who probably has a couple of trades, wants to move on. I probably would sell Payne Haas if you have a few trades left. If you've got like one left and are wanting to make one this week, it's a little dodgy. But I mean, Payne Haas is Payne Haas, but how close is Isaiah Yo going to go in around 20 to averaging the same for the rest of the year and, well, having a whole extra game? It's probably a question of your round 20 mids. So I would say yes, pending your round 20 mids. If you need somebody, I would sell. Yeah, we've got Lenti talking about that. You're probably wanting him back. Yes, possibly. But if Haas's money allows you to get a few players like Yo for a tiny bit cheaper and things like that, it might still work out. Yeah, I tell you what, trading players in and out multiple times isn't fun. I did that personally with Haas. Sold him in for about 900k round 13. Probably wished I hadn't. Worked out, not the worst, but yeah. Top 3 pods for the run home. Right, this is interesting. This would have worked better last night in a discussion with a bunch of different players. We would have got quite a good number of answers. So I reckon, I'm a little bit biased, but I reckon one of the best pods for the run home is going to be Greg Marzu. I've bought him recently, and we've just seen what he can do last week. The Knights flogged the Bulldogs, and Gluhan's best got 3 tries, and Marzu got 1 with 15 tackle breaks. 15. He's that sort of guy. He's like Brian To'o from 2021, but it's not Volandi's ball, and he's still doing the same thing. He's just moved up to the top of the wing fullback averages, I believe, although it's not a perfect representation because you've got guys like Latrell with an injury game, and you've got guys like Drinkwater absolutely coming home with a wet sail because the Cows have turned it around. I think Drinkwater has 16 try assists in his last 7 games I looked up. That's just mental numbers. So pods for the run home, if your third gun wing fullback is Marzu, I think you'll be doing pretty well. Pod number 2, I would probably go Britton Nikora, purely because he loves scoring tries, and although his base isn't amazing, I did hear from another bloke that his base is actually up this year. I think his run meters are up from about 95 on average to like 115 on average, and his tackles are up like 2 as well. And the Sharks are finally figuring out how to use him, and short ball to Nikora over the line is why he's scoring so well this year, and guys outside him like Jesse Ramian and Sione Katoa aren't. So I like Britton Nikora. He's the cheapest now of that Bateman IPAP Nikora bunch. I really reckon he could go well if he manages to keep scoring tries. And I mean, what better chance is he going to get this week? We thought it was going to be huge last week, and he did score 2 tries. I mean, 70. It was a big score, so I wouldn't expect huge base. But I mean, this week again, Tigers, he could get another double. So Nikora Marzu, who would go as third? What's a position that not a lot of people are going to have that could be a really good keeper in the run home? I reckon one of Munster and Cherry Evans, because you're not going to be able to own both unless you're probably committing to not owning Cleary again. Because if you, or selling Sean Johnson, because you're going to have Hynes Cleary, Johnson, DC, Munster, 5 elite halves in your team. I think that's probably too many. And so you probably want to spread the love elsewhere in other positions. DCE is a better player fantasy-wise when there's no Tommy Turbo, 5 points increased. He also thrives when Jake Dvorovich is there. He's got a big increase there as well. However, there is another stat that I found the other day that he does not score anywhere near as well when he's playing with Josh Schuster compared to other guys this year. So, look, they're a bit of a competing opposites, but really, I mean, we saw what he did last week. 2 tries, 71. Maybe he thought it could have been bigger, but I mean, it's still he's scoring tries, and it was 71 points. Munster, I think he's averaged something ridiculous like 67 and 69 in the run home from Origin the last couple of years. So either of those two would probably be my third pod as the gun to pick up on the way home. All right. We've got Durr with a bit of a team post here. Feel like both Turpin and Smith at trades. Is Penasini and Valence to worry the correct options this week? Well, that's sort of a bad way to put it, Durr. Like, there is never a correct option in fantasy unless they're so far ahead of everybody else that it's not funny. There's always going to be issues, injuries, things like that. So Turpin and Smith, any other issues I'm missing? So he's got, does he have 1 trade or 2? I can't really see. Okay, so he's got 3 left and making 2, if I'm reading that correctly. What has he got? He has a full squad apart from wing fullbacks. So if you've got 2 wing fullbacks out, I would tend to bring one in, whether that is Tavare or somebody else. And he's also brought in Penasini, hasn't he? So he's missing 1 centre and 2 wing fullbacks. Look, Tavare does make a lot of sense. Seb Chris is another one I discussed. You could go for like a Munro as well. Tavare is a good pick though. Look, how many eels does he have? He's buying Penasini. He's got Hopgood, Penasini, and Moses. He's held Moses. Okay. I don't know whether I would buy Penasini this week. It's a real tough thing to say, but he relies on Moses getting him the ball. Moses is very dominant this year, getting the hands on the ball, shoveling it to Penasini, and Penasini's getting a lot of attack this year. Last time he played without Moses, I think Penasini scored like 20 or something like that. He's a gun. You'll want him or somebody who scores similarly to him for the run home. He plays this week. A lot of others don't. But will he do that well this week? You could probably get another cash down and buy somebody like Valentine Holmes with the cows lighting it up, or even Dane Gagai if he's back. So, look, they're okay. They're decent trades. Any other issues I'm missing? Sand and Smith. Yeah, I think Walker and Cheese are back in reserve grade this week or something like that. So Sanders Smith could be out of the team next week. Does make sense to trade if you really think they're going to be in next week, but it's not certain. I don't like to jump early unless it's for like green dots and things that you know are going to happen. Brimson. Brimson's a probable or close to wing fullback keeper. Who's he got? Buller, Garrick, Brimson, Drinkwater, Ponga. Yeah, I'd probably sell Buller out of that lot next week rather than selling Brimson. So no real problems with that. I would tend to get someone other than Penasini so you don't miss 3 really expensive eels unless you plan on selling one of them like Hopgood when the full eel squad's back. So decent trades. Could do someone different to Penasini, but not bad either. Cookie. As you know, I'm out of trades until next week when we get the 8 extras. Do you have any suggestions on how to pass the time? I usually spend hypothesizing my trades for the week. Look, Griff, I'm not Cookie, and I'm not one that usually does that because I cannot stand the frustration of doing that. But look, passing the time by taking up a new interest or hobby, keeping in mind deciding which condiments to pair with flavored chicken tendies or getting a cat are not options. I would, yeah, Timbo's saying do your Mixer research. I would get stuck into that. Now, what we're talking about for Mixer is the NRLW is starting. I think it's going to start about 2 weeks, the 20th of July, around there, which equates to round 21 for the men's. So what happens in Mixer is you play similar to fantasy scores, fantasy scoring, but you only have 6 positions for 6 players. You've got to pick 3 women and 3 blokes. So 3 from the NRLW, 3 from the NRL, with 1 captain for each of the NRL and NRLW. I was interested to see the difference between the men's and women's stats for position, because some things aren't as high as you would expect. So I think from memory, there's only like a couple of good hooker options for the ladies. And other than that, they often score like in about 25-30 sort of a thing. I mean, they've got shorter games, so in general, they're going to score a bit lower. It's not as fast as the men's game, but I think the hooker is in a great position. Edge is in a great position, apart from a couple. The ones that you really want to get on board with are probably the mids. So props, not so much, but can, especially got people like Millie Boyle, and the locks. So people like Taufa, who I think's moved to the Raiders this year instead of the Eels. They're guns who can get a 50 average in the mids for the women's, which is pretty good. Halves and wing fullback, probably the better 2 positions as well. I think Ali Brigginshaw and showing me up. I can't remember the other women's. I'm going to have to look into it myself, Timbo. But yeah, there's a couple of wing fullbacks that did really well and even were passing a good number of the men's guns last year. So there's a lot of positional players that do particularly well in their position, and certain positions that are better or worse between the 2 competitions. So I would look into that a little bit more. It's harder to find and dig for the stats, but if you go onto the NRL website, look at the players and sort of dig into their stats, it takes a little bit more time, but it's quite interesting to learn a bit more about the game. Okay, so I'll give a quick look at Mixer. It's also got some prizes. You've got things like weekly prize, and then that's more than, look at that, guys. That's more than regular fantasy. I think you get $2,000 and tickets to Magic Round paid for, or the grand final, something like that, and $4,000 for first. I mean, it's sponsored by Bundaberg, so as a company that sells 18 plus material with alcoholics, I guess that's probably why the comp's 18 plus only to be eligible for prizes. But it's a really fun thing to do and get invested in, and quite a fresh fantasy experience. It looks a bit like this. This is my very basic fantasy team. I've got Taufa, as I was mentioning, David Fafita, because he's just so far ahead in the edge position for the men's. Dane Gagai, if he's back, because he's really good. I haven't looked at his matchup, but he can go big. Tamika Upton, that was another one of the fullbacks who can score really, really well for the women's. So you've got the percentages selected, average points. I haven't filled in yet because nobody's played from the start of the season. You can sort by clubs, positions, NRL, NRLW, select percentage. It's a really interesting little thing to play. I think it continues on through finals. That's how it was going last year, but now that we've got 10 teams, it starts a little bit earlier for the women's. Okay, so that's NRL Mixer. Get into that. It's really good fun. Hi Cookie we've got Corey, Weak Gutted Dog. Hi Corey, with the pack seemingly steamrolling past you at the moment, how do you intend on stopping this fall off? What pods are you going for, recommending for the run home, or are they secret? Ooh, bit of a fire at Cookie there. Yeah, there's a special league for some podcasters. I think about 2 or 3 were invited from every podcast, from some of the main podcasts by one of the Facebook page from the Rogues. He also run the In the Bin podcast, and Cookie's in that, so he's slipped a little bit in the rankings the last few weeks, and I think he's back down to 10th now, even though he's like about 600th or something like that. You can just see how competitive the comp is this year. So I think Cookie's going to look to really go hard this week and next, and he's going to make up a lot of ranks. So what's going to happen, I think, is that we'll see a resurgence from Cookie. I don't know if he's going to be able to win now because he's quite far back. I think he's about 400 points, 450 off first. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit hard for him. But he definitely could come back with those high number of trades. Somebody who could really give this comp a shake is Irregular Rob from NRL Fantasy Amateurs. He's got 8 left. He has 8 trades left, plus the 8 that we're going to get, 16. He's going to make 4 trades in round 27 and kill us all with like a 1,050 score, while all of us getting 800 because all the Origin guns are being rested. So watch out for Rob. At the moment, we got the other Christopher C, Christopher Chapman Ward versus Christopher Cook down in 10th. I'm 5th at the moment, just behind Jamie from NRL Fantasy Analysis, Jamie Brown Fantasy Analysis, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, that's how he's going. I think Cookie's going to make a run. Don't know whether it'll be first. He might get into the top 3 or 5, though. We'll see. And just below Cookie, we got Roscoe. So I think Ross will do all right. I don't know if he's going to make it anymore. He's about 600 back, but it's a good comp this year. There's a few pretenders that were knocked out, but I'll be interested to see who gets involved next year. Might even be bigger and better. Okay, we got Cookie's answers there. All right, he's answering my question. Happy with a potential red dot in a few weeks. Munro fits that. Main competition is Milne. How does Munro handle first grade as a young bloke? Yeah, I agree. There's a good chance that he could be red dot, but if that happens, I'm okay with it. I've got a lot of money, a good team value by now, and it's going to allow me to hopefully get 2 really big guns from guys like Alex Johnston and Jareen Buller next week, so I'm pretty happy with that. Pull the trigger, you reckon, so that Robson to hands. Team dependent for Haas. Yeah, I was saying, especially for Corey Horsburgh. Top 3 pods. Okay, what did he go? AFB, Trell, Nikora, Halmole, Holmes, Kotomazu, Murray, Edwards. That's not 3, Cookie, but some good ones in there. I think most of mine were mentioned. I don't know if Trell's going to be a pod. I think everybody, and it's just going to jump on, and Edwards might actually be the pod out of them, but he's a lot cheaper, so we'll see how it goes. What's your plan for the next 8 trades? Treat every trade like pure gold. I reckon you can get away with it, Cookie, because you've got more trades than most. But yeah, he likes getting Penasini. Talk more about Tavares. So I don't mind getting Penasini if you're in it for the long run. But if you're wanting average, I reckon I'd probably go for someone else and get a cash down, because Penasini might get a significant drop this week. We'll see how it goes. Thought this was a podcast. La 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 la. There we go. So that's all the Spotify delayed live questions. We'll put this up, probably won't come out too far before the game now, I'd expect, but it should be up before the game tonight anyway. So if you manage to be watching this before Nico Hynes hopefully goes ballistic and scores 125 fantasy points, well, good on you. And we'll see you next week, hopefully with the regular pod.